Hi, everybody. It is Susan Gerard here with the Emotional Intelligence Show. And today we're going to talk about dealing with difficult people. And this is going to be like a mini lesson on dealing with difficult people. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what it feels like to, hi Alicia, to interact with difficult people. How do you know you're dealing with a difficult person? Usually you know because you try to avoid these people. You don't feel good or powerful when you're around them. And often you feel depleted when you deal with them. You feel like you're tired, or you just want to like have a drink or smoke a joint or run away and join the circus. That's what it's like when you deal with difficult people. And sometimes it's hard because you can't really tell why you don't like dealing with them. You just know that you don't feel good about the interaction. You might not be able to put your finger on it, or you may not be able to explain why the interaction doesn't feel good. So why does it feel the way it feels? The reason it feels the way it feels is because when difficult people interact with you, they have a lot of intense emotions that they are not processing, and they want relief from those emotions. And they feel like, being around other people or interacting with other people will help them with that. And that's not true unless they're going to see a therapist. But what it does do, though, is, when someone approaches you with a lot of intensity, hi, Elizabeth. When someone approaches you with a lot of intensity, you're going to feel that intensity. And you're not going, and you don't want, like, let's look at it this way. You're doing what you do at work, and you're doing your job, and you're on a roll, you're in the flow, and then here comes the difficult person. And they have something that they think is really important, and it doesn't matter how important, what you're doing is to them. But what they're really doing is they're seeking relief from the intensity that they're feeling. And they could do that by distracting themselves and wasting your time, or by trying to hand over whatever they're dealing with to you to take care of. And that is disruptive and hard, especially if you like the work you're doing and you want to do good work, and then you're doing it and you're feeling the reward of that. But then here comes the difficult person, and they're trying to give you like additional stuff to do. And what they're really trying to do is relieve their own anxiety and intensity. So here's where the temptation is for those of us who are skilled at what we do, we like what we do, and we have a plan for our lives, and we are taking steps every day to create that life that we want to live. So the temptation is to relieve that intensity. And we can relieve it by saying, yes, sure, I'll do this thing. Or, we just want to get that person away from us. So we might agree to do the thing, and that will get the person away from us, but then we have this other stuff to do. And that can cause resentment, and it can also cause burnout. So that's the other part of this interaction with a difficult person, is there's kind of a no-win here. Like, you can't win. Like, you were winning before you even talked to that person, and now after you talk to them, like, there's no way to win. But we're going to talk about how to deal with that. So we talked about the temptation. So we need to talk about our part in this, because there's a reason difficult people like competent, easygoing people who get things done and who have great communication skills. The reason they like us is because we do have all of these skills and we can take care of things. And if we're emotionally intelligent, we're processing our emotions, we're just powerhouses. But that doesn't mean we should be like cleaning up other people's messes. It doesn't mean that we should be taking on their, like doing emotional labor for them, you know, like trying to relieve them of their anxiety. That's not what we want to do. But because we're so good at these things, we can feel a certain kind of reward when we say yes by thinking that we're superior. And I've done it. And by building an identity around that superiority. And also like being this kind of like being a helper, or being someone who will like step in and save the day. You know, like it gives us a certain reputation that we might like in the short term, but in the long term, it's going to get out of control and you're going to be exhausted and burned out. And the thing is, we want like everybody that we work with, or everyone that we're in a relationship with, to stand on their own 2 feet and to bring their best to whatever they're doing. And if we step in because we can get like a little reward of feeling superior, or of feeling powerful because we're the helping one, we're just gonna create more problems. So we really don't want to do that. So yeah, so just to review, we don't want the resentment, we don't want the burnout, we don't want to be blown off course of what we're trying to create for ourselves within the work that we're doing, the kind of life that we want to lead. And the more that you do, the more they're going to bring to you. So let me check my notes out. Okay, so in these interactions, what you're going to notice about difficult people are some of the things they don't do. They don't know how to process their emotions, their intensity, and their drama, so they're carrying that around with them, and they want to dump it because, let's face it, nobody likes the way that feels. But you are not the dumping ground for that. And when they have something that they're struggling with, they have no awareness of how it affects you in your plans. And then the third thing is, if you decide to help, you don't get credit for your skills and for your willingness and for being a team player. That is not reciprocated. And that is why, like, even if you feel that rush of, you know, I'm so confident and I'm saving the day, it's not really worth it in the end, because you don't get any credit for it, and you're also not giving yourself credit for what you're doing. And we'll talk a little more about that later. And also the thing about these difficult people is they live in the scarcity mindset. Like, you know, everything is like a threat. Everything is like putting them on the brink of some, disaster, whether it's real or not. And it's very exhausting. So let's talk about what we can do when we're approached by difficult people. And the first thing we want to do is slow the interaction down. And you can remember the acronym SLID for slide. It's not like exactly how you spell it, but slow the interaction down. Oh, that's not the right one. STID, slow the interaction down. So the reason you want to slow the interaction down is because, like I said, these people are in anxiety. They feel entitled to your help, regardless of how that affects you. So the way that you slow the interaction down is you can just let them start talking, and they'll be talking, and it'll be like so urgent and all of this, but just let them start talking. And when they take a breath, what you want to do is repeat back as much of what they said as you can. So not word for word, but just like, wow, this sounds really important to you. I can tell it's very important to you because you're talking really fast. You're very animated. Your brow is furrowed. What you want to do is give them some feedback about how they look and what they're doing so that they can come back to themselves. So that's one way that you can slow the interaction down. And once you do that, a lot of times people will start to slow down and they'll start to kind of come back in the present moment. And that is where you can come to the next part. Keep slowing them down until they're slow enough, because you want to get them out of the reptilian brain, that emotional brain, and get them up here where they can think, because they're not thinking. And we want to stay in that thinking brain. We don't want to join them in that reptile brain. So once you get them to slow down, then you're going to share information that they're missing. They're always missing information, always. They might be overlooking, other people to talk to about this who are more qualified than you, or other people who could share in responsibility, or they may not be holding someone accountable for things that they should have done but didn't do. So you want to fill in those variables. And you can do that without being abrasive. Like you could say, oh, I thought Jim was supposed to do this thing. And then just see what they say, spreadsheets, it's not my zone of genius, but, Debbie is fantastic at spreadsheets. It'll come to you as you do it, but you want to provide the missing variables. And that could also be, I'm working on project X, Y, and Z right now. So try those things and just keep going with it. And then, what you want to do is ask questions. Well, what that was like, asking questions to redirect the responsibility. Because more often than not, the responsibility isn't yours. They're just coming to you because you're just damn good at what you do. And because some of us like that feeling of superiority and control we get when we do stuff like that. But then, we end up emotionally crashing and being exhausted and binging on Netflix and ice cream, and we don't want to do that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is, let's say it looks like you're going to end up doing this thing. So what you want to do is ask questions to clarify what is really important about this thing that needs to be done. And you're going to write it down. Write it down, write it down, write it down. And the reason you're going to write it down is because when difficult people bring stuff to you, like I said, they're missing stuff. And they may have already decided in their mind how they want this whole thing to play out. And if they're micromanagers, they have it down to the detail, but we all know it's not going to turn out that way because life is not like that. So try to write down what is essential and what is important to that person. And, you know, after you get some things down, show them what you wrote and say, is there anything else you'd like to add to this list? And you're going to be so glad you kept a list, because so many times when you do something for a difficult person, you bring that result, that end result to them, and they're like, well, this isn't what I wanted. And if you wrote it down, you can say, well, here's what we discussed. Please tell me what isn't right here. And they may tell you something, but if it's not on the list, whether they admit it or not, you know, it was their omission. And if you don't have a list, they're going to try and lay that on you. And there you were, like, you know, doing good work for them, and they're trying to lay this on you, and you don't need that. Okay, so let's see, what's our last thing? Okay, and then the last, so when you're just, so let's say it looks like you're gonna do this, whether you really want to or not. Maybe it's at work. Now what you need to do is really decide on a personal level that you want to do it. Now, if anyone asked you, do you want to do this? You'd say no. But what we want to do is ask ourselves, in this situation, does doing this thing further my life goals? Does this help me build the kind of life I want to live? You know, it may be that you want to learn certain things in this situation, and this dumb thing that this person dumped on you is a little part of it. And you may just decide yes, because the benefits outweigh the bullshit. Now, if that's not the case, you might want to look for other work. But if you just, so the thing is, like, what I don't want you to do is just say, shit, I have to do this and do it. I want you to actually make that conscious decision for yourself. Yeah, I would rather not do this, but in the broader context, I think it's a good thing to do because the benefits outweigh the BS. So, and then this is the best part. The best part is, after you get all of that and you decide, I want you to completely forget about the whole thing. And I know this sounds really dumb, like, why go through all of that and just forget about it? But what I mean by forget about it is forget about it for now. You know, put it aside, take like a walk, go get a cup of coffee or something, and just reset yourself, and then go back to what you were doing. And this takes a little practice. It's not the easiest thing to do, but because you're going to be tempted to want to pick this project up and just whip right through it and get it done so you don't have to think about it anymore. But I find that never really works. If it works for you, just, yeah, go ahead. But what I do is I put it aside like it never happened. And then I take a walk, get a coffee, and then I go back to the project that I wanted to work on, that I had planned to work on. And then the most amazing thing happens. all of a sudden I get like all of these ideas that are like super simple about how to solve this problem, doing like the least amount of work possible. And it's amazing, like, because sometimes when people have handed me projects, I'm thinking as I'm dealing with this difficult person, how am I going to make this work? How am I going to get like this person to do this thing? Because maybe it's really hard, or maybe they're like super busy, and you know, you're thinking of all these things. But if you put it aside after the person leaves and you do something to reset yourself, all of a sudden it's, you know, you're going to have all kinds of great ideas, and you won't feel like you're on a treadmill, or like you're being run by circumstances. You'll feel a lot more in control. And the other thing that has happened when I've just put stuff aside is that something happens and it turns out I don't have to do anything. Like, I wish I could think of an example right now, but you know, all of a sudden the problem's solved and I didn't have to lift a finger, which is really, really good. So I hope this was helpful in dealing with difficult people. I know, like, the steps that I told you: slow things down, share the variables that they're missing, ask questions to redirect responsibility, and then ask questions and write down, you know, about the project. I know that seems like a lot, and like a lot of extra work, like when really you just want to tell those people to just fuck off. I mean, I've been there. But what you're doing, the other thing, the other benefit of doing this is that people will stop bringing their emergencies to you because they know that you're not going to join in the anxiety, and that you're going to slow things way down, and you're going to ask a lot of questions. And, you know, a lot of times they're not really looking for the solution. They're looking for like a misery loves company kind of situation. So you're planting seeds, even though at first this seems like tedious. You're planting seeds, and eventually that person will get like, oh, you know, don't go to Alicia for this, or don't go to Elizabeth for this, because you know, they don't want to like join my, you know, scarcity party. They just want to get shit done. So, so there you have it. That's what I have for dealing with difficult people. I hope it's helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me, and I'll do my best to answer them in the comments. And the only other thing I wanted to say is that I know it seems like I give a lot of information on my videos, and you might think, well, Susan gives so much information, why would you ever like work with her? And the reason that people work with me is because they want to cut their learning curve way down. You can definitely learn how to do emotional intelligence, how to develop your own emotional intelligence from listening to these videos. But when you work with someone who's already been through the whole process, you avoid a lot of pitfalls, a lot of experimentation, and it's a lot easier. It goes a lot faster. And the benefit of that is, you know, the only is time. I don't know, it says trying to reconnect. I don't know if you can hear me, but the only renewable resource that we, non-renewable resource is time. So that is why you would choose to work with someone and to invest in yourself. And, you know, women are taught to invest in their shampoo, their makeup, their clothes, their jewelry, all of these things. But what you really want to invest in is your ability to make the life you want to make and live the life that you want to live. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next Wednesday. I decided to move these up a day and up an hour because I was not at my best on Thursday at 5. So I'll see you Wednesday at 4. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments, or you can go on the website, theemotionalintelligenceschool.com, and there's a contact form. Feel free to send it to me. I'll answer it usually within 24 hours, unless it's on the weekend. So thank you for joining me. Aloha.